Hello friends! While the Saab 9-3 shared a chassis with the Vectra C, the engines were only partially identical. At the time of the start of sales, 4 different motors were offered. The base was the 1.8T, developing 150 horsepower. The 2.0T had 175 horsepower, and the 2.0 T had 210 horsepower. There was only one diesel engine, a 2.2-liter TID unit with a capacity of 125 horsepower. The obsolete 2.2 TID was replaced in 2005 with a 1.9-liter turbo diesel from Fiat, 120 and 150 horsepower. Later, another modification of the 180 horsepower diesel unit was added, with 2 turbines. In 2004, the gasoline engine range was supplemented by a single gasoline aspirated engine with a capacity of 122 horsepower. A year later, a V6 2.8T engine appeared with a return of 230 and 250 horsepower. Since 2008, the engine has added up to 280 horsepower in power. Mention should also be made of 2 unpopular versions of the Saab 9-3, powered by bioethanol E85 1.8T with a capacity of 175 horsepower and 2.0T biopower with 200 horsepower. The 1.8T, 2.0T, and 2.0 T petrol turbo engines are designed by Saab. Despite the different designation, these units have the same working volume of 2 liters and belong to the B207 family. The brand new B207 turbocharged 4-cylinder engine was specially prepared for the second generation Saab 9-3. It has nothing to do with the old and problematic B205 and B235, which were intended primarily for the first generation 9.5. This means that the B207 engines do not experience the lubrication problems caused by overheating and therefore oil degradation that the B205 and B235 used to worry about. Concomitant reasons were a small oil filter and an insufficient supply of oil, only 4 liters. The timing chain, despite hard work, can withstand several 100,000 kilometers. Softness and balance of work are provided by 2 balancing shafts in an aluminum block. They are also driven by a chain, but already shorter. However, after 200 to 300,000 kilometers, the tensioner or chain damper may fail. The damper shoe is made of plastic. Over time, the plastic shrinks and breaks down. The valve clearances in these engines are hydraulically controlled. For this reason, it is extremely important to change the oil regularly. Mechanics recommend using SAE 0W40 oils, which must meet EE or CFS specifications. It will take 6 liters of oil, which is 2 liters more than the older generation turbo engines. Closer to 300,000 kilometers, oil consumption begins to increase. Sometimes you have to deal with burnout of the piston. Some owners prefer to get by with the contract engine, which will cost a little less. It is necessary to repair or change the cylinder head due to the development of valves. The turbocharger usually serves more than 250 to 300,000 kilometers. Interruptions in the operation of the engine usually occur due to the failure of the engine control unit. It is located on the intake manifold, where it is exposed to high temperatures and vibrations. Repair is considered an unreliable undertaking. Another vulnerability is plastic throttle gears. The naturally aspirated 1.8, without the extra T, is the Z18XE designed by Opel. It uses a belt instead of a timing chain. It lacks balance shafts, and of course it lacks boost. The engine is quite reliable, but noticeably weaker than Swedish turbo engines. The speakers, although not enough, are enough for everyday traveling. The 2.8-liter 6-cylinder turbo engine created by Holden the Australian division of GM became the top one. It is known for the Opel Vectra OPC and Insignia OPC. Depending on the version and year of manufacture, the motor provided power from 230 to 280 horsepower. If you want dynamics combined with the typical character of a 6-cylinder engine, then you have no other choice. Cars with such a motor were both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive XWD. Either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed automatic Aisin AF40 was responsible for transmitting torque. Alas, the reliability of the engine is not so bright and is seriously inferior to Swedish 4-cylinder turbo engines. The electronic control unit here is also located behind the engine, where it is exposed to significant heat, which adversely affects its health. The second problem concerns the ignition coils. High voltage wires can also be the cause of uneven operation. But how do you know if the wires and coils are in order? To do this, during a test drive, you need to fully press the gas pedal a couple of times. Thrust should increase smoothly and linearly. The third problem is related to the timing chain. It sometimes stretches, as extraneous noise will tell you. There have even been cases of chain jumping. Unfortunately, spare parts for a 6-cylinder engine are not easy to find. 8-valve 1.9 TID, mechanically strong, quiet, and reliable. The 16-valve version is more complex. Typical problems include swirl flaps malfunctioning, which leads to malfunctioning of the EGR valve and, in extreme cases, clogging of the particulate filter. 2.0 TID is not the most successful diesel offered by GM. The motor is lucky, but noisy and vibrates a lot. In addition, it is not very economical, and it is also equipped with a vulnerable and non-repairable version of the Bosch VP44 radial injection pump. At the same time, in turbo diesels, the injection system and the dual-mass flywheel are considered quite gentle. Depending on the version of the engine, the market, and the year of manufacture, 5- and 6-speed manual gearboxes as well as an automatic were offered to choose from. The creator of the automatic transmission is the Japanese company Aisin. The AF40 automatic is very reliable, but subject to regular oil changes every 60,000 kilometers. The gearbox even has its own oil dipstick. Serious repairs to the machine may be needed closer to 300,000 kilometers. The clutch of a manual transmission usually runs over 200,000 kilometers. After 150 to 200,000 kilometers, CV joints may fail. The Vectra's affinity comes from identical front lower arms made from aluminum, which was unique at the time the car was created. A multi-element circuit with 4 levers on each side is installed at the back. The widest wishbone is made of aluminum alloy and serves to support the spring. It has the typical spherical shape known from Opels back in the 1980s. Saab calls this axle reaxis to highlight its role in passive driving. The kinematics slightly turns the rear wheels in the opposite direction to the front ones by an amount depending on the turning radius and load. This eliminates understeer. The suspension of the Saab 9.3 is instantly killed by broken roads, especially the front. The front and rear levers, ball joints, stabilizer struts wear out quickly. Wheel bearings do not differ in long service life. In addition, regular monitoring of the toe angle is required. If this is not done systematically, then the eccentric bolt of one of the rear wishbones may stick. However, this defect is inherent in all cars with a multi-link rear suspension, and owners of Volkswagen, Ford, Mazda, Skoda, Volvo, etc. face it. After 200 to 300,000 kilometers, the power steering pump may become ill. there are problems with the steering rack. A knock or leak appears. After 200 to 300,000 kilometers, the steering shaft crosspiece wears out. On specimens older than 12 to 15 years, corrosion is often found on the rear wheel arches. Sometimes the support cups of the front shock absorbers also rot to holes. Before the second upgrade in 2007, only a year after the first, owners complained about the poor quality of finishing materials in the cabin, especially if we talk about the model in a premium context. Most of the elements are made of hard grades of plastic, which at the same time is very resistant to scratches. After prolonged use, squeaks appear in the cabin. However, it is hard to deny the fact that the interior design is interesting at the same time. Already with the first update, the manufacturer changed the climate control panel. Instead of a large number of buttons, 3 rotary switches appeared. The coating of the old buttons did not differ in durability, the characters disappeared, which made it difficult to control the climate. More modern climate control systems have received more reliable electronics, and the monochrome screen was replaced by a color one. As a result, the problems with blurring of pixels disappeared, which made it difficult to read information from the display. Some owners complain about error messages appearing too often on the onboard computer display. It should also be noted the specific ignition key that works with Trionic 8's own electronics. This is not a classic key, but an electronic one with a plastic case. Unfortunately, his body sometimes breaks. If there is no reaction to pressing the remote control buttons, then most likely the receiver in the car has failed. At the same time, the electronics warns in advance about the discharge of the battery in the key by a message on the multifunctional display. Ignition problems can also be caused by a malfunction of the SIM module. With age, the radiator and air conditioner radiator lose their tightness. Given that Saab as a car manufacturer no longer officially exists, car owners' concerns about spare parts are well-founded. Luckily, subsidiary Saab Parts still offers a full range of parts. At the same time, many spare parts are manufactured by various third-party manufacturers. If you know of other model malfunctions, be sure to write about it.